Greetings and salutations, YouTube viewers. I'm Timothy Scott Purvis, and this is your new Cosmic Let's Play. A new review series that covers the game in question, with an overview of how the game plays and how replayable it is overall. If you were curious how I came to my final results, I will post the categories I made up below in the description box. It won't be necessarily reflective of how fun a game is, but it certainly will get into the design and play mechanics of the game. So I hope you get something out of this. Now, this episode of Cosmic Let's Play is all about Firewatch. I downloaded this on the PSN a while back and only recently played and completed it. This review focuses on my thoughts on the game itself. So, what is Firewatch? Firewatch is a first-person walking simulator, which is probably the best description I can give on the game. There isn't a lot of exploration. You don't have to worry about survival, as you're really just going from one point to another. And you, as the character of Henry, pretty much spend the majority of your time wandering around a national park, a place called Thoroughfare Trail, which apparently is so many miles away from Yellowstone. Now, the environments are gorgeous, so you will have plenty of nature to look at as you continue along the loosely built plot line. In fact, the entire beginning sequence took entirely too long to plod through and actually adds very little to the game. But, and I stress, this is a big but, it does add to the story. Sort of. I'm quite convinced there was an easier way to go about developing this particular story element, but it is what it is. You spend the first half an hour or so making choices on a dialogue screen that's periodically broken up by interactive bits. Scenes, that you play through. You do one thing, and then you go immediately back to the dialogue selection screen, which just goes on and on and on as you make your decisions, and you keep thinking, why don't I have better decisions to make? Because it just comes off seeming like you're a dick no matter what you chose. Or choose, I should say. But it's minimally interactive. Which brings you to the park, where you are all set to become essentially a Firewatch Ranger. I'm not sure if answering an ad in the paper makes anyone qualified for such a profession, even if it is just for the summer. But this is how the game starts, so we'll roll with it. As we get into the meat and potatoes of the actual game, we're introduced to our constant companion in the form of a disembodied voice over a radio, whose name is Delilah. Essentially, she's in charge of the area and your activities, and you basically just follow her directives as you explore the relatively linear paths of the game. Now, there are some areas to check out, but it's mostly just for the scenery, which isn't all that bad, because the game is very beautiful. Now, the cell shading design works wonderfully here, and the environment can be a little intimidating when you're in a hurry from time to time. Stylistically, the environment designs are well thought out, and definitely make the player feel like they're there and savoring everything this world has to offer, which isn't much, but we'll get to that. The textures of the tree The textures of the trees, the ground, the lake effects, oh my god, the skies and the stars, and everything are excellently laid out and feel genuine with a cel-shaded overlay. In fact, in spite of the shell shading overlay, it's just so gorgeously represented. All the little details, from plant spores floating in the air to butterflies flittering about, are well realized. Though there is very little by way of animal life. In fact, I only recall seeing one particular moose or a deer that was on the pathway in the very beginning of the game. In fact, I also can tell you that there's a raccoon at one point as well. I didn't see it, but I did see a playthrough of the game where the raccoon showed up. There are some other animals here and there, not a very wide variety, so it makes the forest kind of sparsely populated, really. The colors of the environment also go a long way to make this feel like a legitimate forest, and that you are there hiking through it. The player can actually imagine their feet hitting the ground as they try to traverse the terrain. Regrettably, the terrain is not always navigatable. And unfortunately, there isn't an ability to climb up rock croppings outside of those that are conveniently placed. This means that areas that look climbable are not, and actually serve more of as an invisible wall, forcing the player to stay on the beaten path, leaving very little room for extracurricular exploration of the amazing scenery. The environment is complex and realistically laid out so that you find yourself constantly trying to figure out how to get around obstacles to proceed with the game, which is a brilliant decision. And I can't really complain about how it's implemented here. It works very well. This is both a benefit and a detriment to the gameplay itself, though. There are very few places that the player can interact with, and regrettably, there are instances, too many in fact, where you are forced to backtrack constantly to retrieve a certain item or to return to a certain location, making the game somewhat monotonous at times. But then again, how many games have we played that are like that? And it's annoying, because regardless of how beautiful the environment is, there are not very many instances of variety in the gameplay offerings and locations discovered. But it is still very much like being in this park. And given that you can complete the game in under 6 hours, this really isn't all that problematic overall. Fortunately, though, you can believe that this is a real location in the woods. And navigating the various areas is pretty simplistic, and the controls are well worked, so that you never feel like you're fighting the controller. The look sensitivity is decent, with only a few hiccups here and there due to the graphic fidelity of the game trying to process. I only noticed a few glitches here and there, but nothing that takes you out of the immersion that the game delivers. I never felt like I was going to throw the controller in frustration and found myself compelled to continue my journey around the forest and the mountains. Strangely, I never once was concerned with the overarching storyline when I normally am. In fact, I think I was rather bothered by some of the storyline thematics when they cropped up. This is because the characters are often kind of idiotic, despite having fairly well thought out and believable dialogue. Don't get me wrong, I can see these people being who they are and making the choices that they made. But the story itself inserts itself into the game rather than being part of the game. It's like it forces itself to be there rather than just being a natural occurrence as the game progresses. And I like immersive storytelling. In fact, you might say I love immersive storytelling. This didn't feel all that immersive. Mostly it was just interfering with my desire to explore all the environment had to offer. I mean, the game starts off with this half an hour or more of intermittent storytelling about how the main character met this girl. And everything that happens as a result of that is what brings him to this forest and to taking this job. The only real mystery that exists with the story is involving a sequence of events that happens about halfway through the game itself. I won't spoil it here, but let's say an opportunity for a great storytelling device and a walking simulator was wasted over a fairly nondescript yet horrible event, which leaves you feeling kind of let down in a way. Not majorly, but somewhat, especially when you get to the climax. However, this is only a minor gripe, really, when the rest of the game is so well laid out. Yet, at nearly $20, and the developer speaking about how story-driven the game is, I just don't think the value is there. It's got a decent script, believable characters, and amazing sound design to go with the visuals, which I'd like to get into briefly now that I think about it. The atmospheric touches with the sound design, the unassuming music, which sounds like it was ripped straight out of The Last of Us, the natural sounds that make you feel like you're in a forest, and the pretty good voice acting on top of it, all add to how this game operates as a work of art. And that's what this game is overall, a work of art. If you enjoy walking simulators and are enthralled with the idea of one that actually does have a fairly decent story, I think you're going to enjoy this game. I don't think you'll enjoy the price point so much, so you might want to wait for a price drop or a sale before you get this title. But hell, I really enjoyed this game, minor gripes aside. There isn't a lot to do in the game, and there is a really tense sequence of events that made me think something different was going to happen, which leads to a climax that doesn't, well, climax. But even so, I'm glad I got the game, and I'm glad I got to experience it. However, and here's where you might think I've lost my mind. I came up with this system to rate the game, and I'm letting the numbers do all the talking. And you know what? I don't disagree with them at all. There are 100 possible points to award this game in my system, and there are 5 categories: graphics, gameplay, level design, scoring, and story, which means each category can be awarded a possible 20 points. There are micro breakdowns to each category, of course, to make it more fair. And you can see those breakdowns in the description below. But enough of that. Here we go. In the department of graphics, I gave the game 18 out of 20 points. It's a beautiful game that still has some issues here and there. But ultimately, you're going to like what you see. The graphical fidelity is so well realized that you can't help but be immersed into the environment. To see the mountains in the background, how beautifully laid out they are. To see how well the cell shading overlay really kind of brings the game out and makes it special. Makes it something that you want to enjoy, that you want to experience at least once. It does a remarkable job of that in the graphics category, which is why I scored it the way I did. But as far as the gameplay is concerned, I awarded the game 11 out of 20 points. Why? Well, because there really isn't anything going on here. I mean, you walk around and you see things, only occasionally interacting with the environment and not really doing much else. Does the camera work? Yeah. It's a very useful control scheme. Are there sensitivity issues? A few. Not the worst and not the best. But what it boils down to is that there really isn't a lot of gameplay for your value, and that's why it earns an 11. And in fact, that gameplay is only intermittently interrupted. And that's what it is, interrupted by the story. Which doesn't really help you enjoy the game much more beyond surface details. But, okay, let's look at level design for what it's worth and what's present here. I gave it a 12 out of 20. Well, let's face it, there's a lot to look at here. I love seeing the mountains in the background. Seeing the mountains in the background. They were beautiful. But the levels themselves, whereas they have some complexity to them, via certain aspects of navigation and trying to figure your way around, which still isn't all that complicated, but does add a slight dynamic to your exploration, loosely based. And all of it is very believable in how it's laid out. The interaction just wasn't there. And the exploration really is very limited and very linear. The layouts only allow you to go in certain directions, and your exploration only goes so far before you hit a wall. And in fact, I actually hit an invisible wall. Seeing environments in the background and a large plane, and I couldn't go beyond that wall. It just stopped. Now, this isn't a major problem for a game that's story-based, loosely speaking, but it seems to me that more time could have been spent varying the level structure to give us more to do, more to climb, more to explore, more to experience and interact with. As it stands, though, it's just kind of there. So how does the scoring hold up? I gave it a respectable 17 out of 20. The atmospheric effects, the beautiful music, just how it feels to hear the wind and the fire roaring in the background. It just immerses you into the world. You feel like you're really there. And it is a well-realized addition to the game to enhance the already beautiful environment. I loved every moment of every sound, every chirp of every cricket, every rustling leaf, every step of the foot. It's enrapturing. It stacks a delicate balance to the game that's already lacking in so much else. The sound design here is immaculate. It really is. It's like you are in the forest. And I can't compliment that factor enough. But we finally get to the story, which is the kicker. Because this is, and again, according to developers, a story-driven game. And I appreciate every ounce of effort they put into this endeavor. They really did spend a lot of time developing this game. They really did bring their best effort. And unfortunately, it does fall short. And I know that they've had problems with some refunds. And there is a reason for that, and that's because the game doesn't give you much. And I think a lot of that is also because of the story. The story I gave an 11 out of 20. For a game that is built around this immersive storyline, I gotta say, I didn't see it. The prologue drags on forever, and doesn't show you what's happening, but rather it tells you everything that's going on and gives you choices on how that scene transpired, which is very weak. And given all those choices in the intro and our lackluster protagonist responses, his reason for being here, there just isn't any payoff. And honestly, I just felt like the responses, like I said before, were kind of dickish. Rather dickish. In every situation, just about. We get blindsided by some other storyline that, while it fits in with the environment and the area, it kind of detracts from the main storyline. It could have worked better if it related, not directly, mind you, but somewhat related to Henry's emotional dilemma that he's going through. As it is, it doesn't relate. It really doesn't have anything to do with anything that's going on in the main storyline. It doesn't make the protagonist think. It's just something that he stumbles upon. And it makes you wonder if there's something bigger going on when there really isn't. And it's just kind of meh. And that doesn't mean it's bad. It isn't. But it doesn't earn its bank. Which is a shame, really. A lot of work obviously went into this game, and it does shine. But regrettably, the numbers are saying that out of a possible 100 points, the game only ranks a 69%. That means it's a D. A high D, but a D nonetheless. It had limitless potential, and it settled for a short walk through the park. It was a fun walk, but there is no real replayability here. You'll get through to the end and say, well, this was fun, but won't find yourself returning because you've already seen everything that the game has to offer. It's too bad you can't rent this game because it's a rental at best. However, that's just how I feel about the game. You might think differently. So, wait for it to get cheaper and check it out for yourself. And I would like to say, thanks for sticking around to watch my Cosmic Let's Play review of Firewatch. Over the coming weeks, I will be posting the video Let's Play footage of the whole gameplay walkthrough with my rambling words throughout, so that you can see the game for yourself, provided you're interested, of course. But this has been your Cosmic Let's Play, and I'll see you next time, loyal viewers. Thanks for watching, and remember, comment, like, and subscribe. Peace.